The Jeep Grand Cherokee of the latest, third generation, which appeared in 2005, despite numerous design changes, did not become an SUV. The big-eyed Grand is a completely different car compared to its predecessor. He got an independent front suspension instead of a solid axle, rack and pinion steering, a bunch of electronic driver assistance and comfort systems. The model was officially sold in our market, but before the introduction of the January duties, many copies were brought from North America. The fact is that in its homeland this Jeep, being new, cost almost half as much as ours. And if you consider that the Grand is one of those cars, the price of which drops noticeably over the first couple of years of operation, it is understandable why most of the cars are of American origin. The difference between Europeans and Americans is small: different optics, different settings for the key fob for controlling service functions, a shifted operating range in the radio, and the digitization of the speedometer in miles. True, there is one more nuance: cars without all-wheel drive were also brought from there. So be careful with cheap options. As for the overall reliability, while the Jeep shows itself on the good side, of course, we must make allowances for the young age of the model. After all, 4 years for an expensive car, for the maintenance of which every penny is not carved out, this is not yet a period. In addition, he does not have systems like air suspension, suffering from salt and dirt. In general, it turned out to be very difficult to collect statistics on typical weaknesses, but something was found. The crosspieces of cardan shafts after 100 to 150,000 kilometers of run begin to play. You cannot change them separately, only the cardan assembly. Also, the front suspension arms are changed as an assembly, because worn-out silent blocks are not supplied as spare parts. Cases of replacement of steering racks are noted. But here, as it often happens, the following scheme works. The client says that something knocks when the steering wheel is turned. The mechanic answers, "Yes, this is a rail, but where is not critical yet. You can drive and drive." Nevertheless, the desire of the client, so that nothing knocks, is realized by replacing the rack. The Grand sold relatively well in Europe thanks to the excellent Daimler Chrysler diesel engine, structurally the same as the Mercedes ML 320 CDI and a number of models with the three-pointed star. This 3.0-liter direct-injection diesel with a variable geometry turbo produces 218 horsepower and a torque of 510 Nm. It's hard to call it especially economical. The consumption of 16 liters of diesel fuel per 100 in the urban cycle with active driving is the norm, although for slow country trips, the figure decreases to 10.5 liters. But in comparison with voracious gasoline engines, diesel is just modest. By design, the Mercedes engine has no weak links, but all the known troubles with fuel equipment come from our collective farm diesel fuel. True, it must be emphasized that diesel versions are significantly more expensive than gasoline ones. The base gasoline engine is a V6 3.7L, 214 horsepower, but the most common is a V8 with a working volume of 4.7L, 231 horsepower, which added up to 303 horsepower after restyling. The next engine in the line is the V8 5.1L, 326 horsepower. Hemi is known for the system for deactivating some of the cylinders in economical driving mode, except it doesn't really reduce his appetite for fuel. Both V8 engines love gasoline, and in urban mode it is difficult to spend less than 20 liters per 100. There is another engine, a fantastic 6.1L, 425 horsepower, Hemi on a charged version of the SRT8, which has a claimed 0 to 100 kilometers per hour in less than 5 seconds. As for malfunctions, regular refueling with low-quality gasoline is a direct path to the destruction of catalysts, which means significant financial costs. And the rest of the negative on the motors is not known. In an all-wheel drive transmission, several options are possible. On expensive versions, QuadraTrack 2 permanent all-wheel drive is used, supplemented by the QuadraDrive 2 system, where all differentials are blocked using electronics that control the friction disc package. All modes are switched by electric drives, and the reduction gear ratio is 2.72. The system works so efficiently that it is impossible to visually track a spinning wheel. In cheaper modifications, QuadraTrack 2 is paired with the Brake Traction Control System, BTCS, a traction control system that performs its mission with the help of standard brake mechanisms. And one more important addition: with V6 engines, a simplified QuadraTrack I transmission is used, where there is permanent all-wheel drive, but there is no downshift. By the way, The top version of the Grand Cherokee SRT8 uses its own quadra-track on-demand design, where there is also no downshift. However, this car sits low and does not touch the asphalt with the plastic body kit, so the lower is really out of place on it. Gearboxes are only automatic 5-speed with manual mode. Recommendations for a long life of machines are traditional: change the oil regularly and use kickdown less often. The electrical part of the Grand Cherokee is not simple, but it has not yet suffered from grief from the mind. That's just the installation of traditional additional security systems is extremely difficult. Of the well-known complaints, we note the failure of one of the sound signals, most likely from winter salt baths, the peephole of the rear view camera, which quickly becomes covered with road dirt, and tire pressure sensors, seen in inadequate readings. The front independent suspension and the rear with the solid beam axle are set up in a non-American way. The SUV is distinguished by a comfortable ride even on broken surfaces, but at the same time it is not Raleigh, with an adequate response to the steering wheel. We have already said about the levers that are replaced in the assembly, without specifying, however, that they go in average Russian conditions of 100 to 120,000 kilometers. The front stabilizer bushings live half as long. Brake discs, both front and rear, when driving on dirty roads, and the owner's fetishistic love for the brake pedal for more than 50,000 kilometers, rarely last. The Grand Cherokee is an off-road vehicle that is not afraid to pull off a hard road, especially on the downshift versions. By the way, even the skirt of the front bumper is made removable, but it's inconvenient to remove it, and putting it dirty in the trunk is unpleasant. But other things being equal, the choice between tearing off or dismantling is obvious. In general, we remove the skirt and forward to the primers.